Uh-oh. Something went wrong. We're trying to, there we are. We are now live, hopefully, on all the different platforms. This is a You're Not Alone, YANA. And it's actually, I try to check in from time to time. And I have, for those who aren't aware, and I'm going to show you right now, I am live here on a Facebook feed, and I'm live here with everyone watching. And the reason that I'm live in two different places is the weather's actually bad above me. So on the cell phone over here, I can kick on in case this bigger feed goes off. So I wanted to address something that a couple people had asked me. And if a couple people had asked you, you might be putting something out there. So I wanted to address it and talk about it while I was checking back in with everyone. Noticed no background. This is just me having a conversation with all of you, waiting for Jax to come home on a very thundery day. So the question is, why do I hate indie comics? And why do I hate indie? And that was weird to be asked that, but I've been asked it now a couple times in different ways. So before I answer it, I want to dig into some things first, and I want to put this out there. Yeah, I've had issues with fellow creators, and there are things that will definitely be interesting in my my autobiography that'll come out about some people and the truth about who they really are. But that'll be by the time that everyone knows who they are, because you can't keep a lie up for very long, and they're all going to expose themselves for who they are. So this is not about my interactions with people. Those are personal. I'll handle them in my own way. I want you to understand the whole reason that indie became a toxic term for me had nothing to do with direct results onto me. As fucked up as this will sound, I had a really fucked up childhood, and I can literally walk away from most relationships like that in a heartbeat. I can decide to be done with a person, and trust I'm done with the person. So it's just how I survived my childhood, having that side of me. So this isn't a reaction to what has happened directly to me. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They're conflating some bad things that might have happened and stories that they've heard that they never really got the truth. Because again, when someone's told something, they don't stop and ask, well, do you have proof that that happened? They just believe it. I'm a big fan of letting people believe whatever the hell they want, because a lot of times it just makes it easier when you actually show up and prove everyone wrong by what you did. So the indie factor, why the change from this guy who was the indie advocate to suddenly um, having something against indie? And it is, first off, the even the idea of an indie advocate, which I've seen other people try to take. No one understands that was given to me. And honestly, when it was given to me, I was called a comic book advocate. I should have leaned into that, which is what comic book advocates is today. Remember, we started off as creators of written sins. I was sold something with indie comics. Real quick history about indie comics, just so everyone's aware. Before print on demand, there was no idea of an indie comics, anything. Print on demand changed that. Everything started as underground comics. The idea that most people try to sell you with indie is that somehow, because we're making all of these comics on our own without the help of Marvel and DC, somehow we're better because we don't have the same rules and stuff. We also don't have the same people checking over our work, making sure that we're putting out a quality product. So there are those two sides of the coin. But sure, we do it independently. But even that's not true, because we're not doing it by ourselves. We're working in teams. So the whole thing about indie, when you stop and really think about it, it starts not making sense. But when I came in to comics, I've been in long enough that I remember a time before print on demand, and I'll tell you, the costs made me pause before creating comics. Matter of fact, I haven't made those comics yet. Those stories I wrote all those years ago, over 10 years ago now. This is my 10th anniversary for having published a comic. The first couple weren't meant ever for commercial grade, nor did I do them commercially. With that said, I want everyone to understand that this is not a knock on the individual creator. The energy it takes to make a comic book is a lot. There's a lot of trust and a lot of belief in that. And there is, that is an impressive feat. However, just because someone can create a comic doesn't mean they necessarily should. There are a lot of people who have blinders on to what they're creating, and a lot of people who are just making a comic to make it into Hollywood. And that muddled up a lot of the indie space within the last 6 years, with the MCU drawing a lot of popularity. You go back 7 years ago, it wasn't the same space. And I've watched it grow and change. Now, the indie thing that I fell in hard to is because of someone who I'm deciding not to actually mention. Um, they were abusive to women. And that was one of the things that I had to deal with and hear about how abusive they were to women. And the stories were the same across about a dozen women. And I saw indie turn their back on these women and support the creator for the majority. And this creator went on to continue to create and people to support him. Another person who I won't mention because this isn't about that. It's just pointing some things out. Person who made a lot of money on Kickstarter, but wasn't fulfilling their Kickstarters and pocketing the money. And people to this day still support that creator. Those are things that very much irked me. Now, the first person was someone who's the one who sold me on indie. And I want to address a few things about the idea of indie. First off, you shouldn't have to support fellow indie creators. That is a false market that will never really help you build a market. And I think it's the most dangerous thing to tell people that they have to support anything. No. Support what you like. Build an audience that will be there for you. And I could go into people stealing email lists, and I could, or sharing them when they're not supposed to, the inappropriate things that are done with indie comic creators, from Kickstarter having an email now that basically gets you a project we love without what it used to be under Camilla Zing when it actually meant something. Nowadays, because you can just email it, it just, to me at least, doesn't mean the same thing. To the very honest fact that most creators out there don't really indie creators don't really give back to the indie comics. And I've covered thousands of creators at this point, and I've seen 70% of them disappear. It's just the truth. And I'm not hating on anyone, but they make their books, they disappear. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't, but they're not interacting every day. So then why this idea of indie? And I had to look at that, and I really had to kind of realize that it became a marketing tool for certain people. And sadly, and I've apologized for this at one point during the Advocator run, I used that to get people to back us, calling it the spirit of indie. And at the time, I actually did believe it or not. What I was saying was this was an independent comic and you should support it, because the people I'd looked up to had given such bad advice, and I had always supported other people, and I thought it was only what you're supposed to do. It's part of the dues, right? We don't support people on Kickstarter who haven't, if they have a project, they had to back 100 projects. Are you hearing it yet? Are you hearing all the toxic stuff we're telling younger creators? That they have to pay to play. We are telling creators that they have to back other creators' projects, and they really shouldn't have to. This isn't a membership club. This isn't a real group. Indie comics itself, the only thing that brings us together is that we're all creating comics and no corporation is paying us to do it. That's it. There's nothing in between. And again, this is not bitterness from me. I have been able to raise the funds I need on Kickstarter. And I know there's some people out there who think if you're not making tens of thousands of dollars, you're not doing it right. And again, that's where the competitiveness, that's where the people are putting down. And this is what I'm noticing in indie, especially as it's aged over the last couple of years. There are people who have turned comic book making into a science. They know how to make a comic book and how to make money for it. There's the boob market. There's the email market. The boob market is pretty self-explanatory. And then the boob market, the boob is about just basically sexualizing women on covers or completely over-sexualizing a comic book, which again, I don't have a problem with sexuality. I'm good with sexuality, but I do have a problem with over-sexualizing women just to make a profit. And that does bother me. But people have turned that into a literal market. And then there's a collector's market that people have tapped into thanks to CGC. And then there's the regular creator who just wants to put out a book that they've created. They're not playing games and they just want to get it out there, followed up by the Hollywood crowd. So there are definitely all these different groups. There's no common ground between many of these people and they don't interact. I can tell you the truth, and we're going to get into, I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want it to go too long. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll answer them later. But there are many different groups who never interact. And I have been able to go between the groups and actually talk to different groups and the varying opinions, and even the fact that it's become locational and certain people thinking that they're better. It shows that there's just this competitiveness within indie comics. And it is dog eat dog. And I watch many creators trounce other creators as if it's sport, as if somehow them talking negatively about a fellow creator will get them somehow better, trashing each other, going after each other, deliberately trying to start fights. It has become a movement that if you start a fight, you get more popular. Me personally, I've had a lot done to me, but I've seen the same things done to other people. And they're granted sometimes that people should be called out for things. And no one's perfect. Lord knows I've done fucked up some things myself. Sometimes we don't handle relationships right and all that we do. But then there's the truly manipulative amongst us. And sometimes those are the people that people admire the most until the truth comes out. When the truth does come out, it takes a long time for people to catch up. So indie comics itself, I know there's the thing about a community, and I struggle with that. I really do struggle with the idea that it's a community, and I've gone back and forth with this, and I've always admitted that I think there can be communities built within creating comics. Any hobby can build communities, and for a lot of people, creating comics is realistically a hobby. I think the umbrella idea of this giant community makes people feel comfortable, as if there's something there to protect them. And I think that's misleading. There is no umbrella there to protect creators. As a matter of fact, I see new creators taking advantage of a lot more now than ever before. People still come to me and tell me about people doing this and this group is doing that, and they're publishing things that they shouldn't. And it continues and it grows. And it sadly becomes something that I saw a long time ago. There's a lot within the idea of this indie and people selling you indie and people telling you how it is to be indie and what you have to do to be indie. But then there are creators within the indie, whatever you want to call it. There are creators out there who are very passionate about what they create. And that's beautiful to watch. And seeing creators just create out of their hearts and really create something that they love is an amazing thing to watch. Watching creators grow and get markets. There's so many creators I've watched now break into comics that I can still talk to. And the friends I know, it's amazing the networking opportunities I have. I've had a lot of people let me down, not by what they did to me, but what they've done in general. And they're the ones who have preached the idea of indie. So as I'm going to wrap this video up, the big question is, do I hate indie? Truth is, I don't think indie ever existed. I think indie's a lie. And even me, with my hubris, decided to change the spelling of indie because the extra I was just about the egos in comics. And I truly feel that there are people who use indie as a gimmick to get people to support them because they make people feel like they have to. It's an unsustainable market. People will drop off, but they'll do it in the very beginning just to get people to back their project. The truth is, our pitches, our product, those are the things that should sell comics, not because we're in a community. Shouldn't be a popularity contest. That's one of the biggest turnoffs to the indie crowd that bothers me the most, is every one of them decides to pick appointed leaders and follow them like lost puppies. not even acknowledging when they're overstepping, and that's what causes bigger problems later. And I've seen it repetitively, and regionally, I've seen it. I've seen it even in England. And people only pay attention to their small little groups, so they only get the small little narrow view. It's like this. Oh, I know everything about indie, but they don't go outside that small view. But when you step back and you look at the whole indie thing, I see very passionate creators being taken advantage of. I don't think there was ever a thing called indie. I think it's something that people made and they've used to market and to take advantage, whether they meant to or not. I think sometimes people don't even realize what they're doing. And that's sad because there's a great spirit of creators, and there are creators who have an amazing amount of energy and love for comic books. And in the end, and I'm going to give credit. I don't want to mention his name, but if he watches this video, he'll know who I'm talking about. Just because this video will probably be taken out of context by certain people, so I don't want to involve anyone. I don't have to. But they said the market will tell you, and he was right. And it's about the market. It's about the fan base. It's about the people who show up at Comic Cons, the people you can reach. My last campaign, I got shut down, whether it be someone hating me or whatever on Facebook. I dragged in almost an entirely new group of creators using TikTok. I mean, a group of fans using just TikTok. I didn't talk about how I was an independent creator because why should I have to? And I don't, I don't hate anyone who wants to call themselves indie. If you want to call yourself that, that's cool. I'm never going to trash on anyone but I love comic books. I don't care if Marvel and DC make them. I don't care if you make them in your basement with your cousins, your friends, your brothers, your sister, your husband, and your wife. I don't care who does it. No one really independently creates their comics. And I'll go as far as to say, if you created your comic entirely by yourself, then you probably screwed something up because there should have at least been an editor involved. So comics is about collaboration. It's not indie. It's not independent of anything. It is dependent on people coming together. So what do I consider then? That would be the big question, right? What would I consider comics not made by Marvel and DC? Truth is they're creator owned, aren't they? It's the big difference. That's how you separate everything. Is is Image indie? Well, let's debate that. When you put creator owned there, does Image do creator owned? Yeah, they do. So they're creator owned business. There you go. It's just that simple. So no, I don't hate indie because there are people out there who are just wanting to be part of something, and that can be a beautiful thing. And there's some people out there who will connect with people and make small little groups, and it will be a wonderful thing. As a matter of fact, I do have small groups like that of creators who do create their own stuff, who are wonderful, who are an amazing group of people. So networking is so important, but we're all part of the comic book industry. If you want to talk about a community, it's not an indie community, it's a comic book community. And it's becoming one of the largest in the world. And we have to make room for everyone and their different opinions and their different approaches. We have to realize that and this is naiveness on me, and I'll own it. We have to realize that just because someone makes comics doesn't make them cool, doesn't make them a good person. There are going to be people who try to take advantage at all points. I don't hate anything about the comic book industry outside of the bad people within it. That's it. There are people who hurt other people. Me turning my back on indie, if I didn't say it, I'm going to say it now. It was about knowing that people use it to take advantage of other people. And I didn't want to be part of anything that did that. I want people to create comics. I've read probably about 1,000 indie comics. And I don't know many people who probably have read as many that aren't comic book creators themselves. I know a lot of creators, and the ones who read a lot of comics will tell you that there are a lot of creators that could use the idea that creating on your own isn't the way to go. Creating with a team is the way to go. Trying to live up to a standard that's commercial is the way to go. And respectfully trying to level up constantly. So become a comic creator, become a creator owned comic book creator, because that's it. Work with your team, respect your team. Don't talk badly about it. If you have to talk badly about anyone else, there's something wrong with you. And it's just that simple. Um, I've always tried to entertain, and I hope that I have in the past. Me drawing back recently, just to end this video, wasn't a response to anything. Honestly, it was an evolution of me. I was always helping other people, but I wasn't helping myself as much as I needed to. My son needed me as a dad and as an educator. During the 2020 whole craziness, when I became his teacher, things did change. I had a way to reach him that he hadn't been reached yet in school. And I stayed involved, and I sacrificed to stay involved with my kid to make sure that he could get it. I'm so happy to say, as of today, basically today was his last day of school. They have 2 more days, but they're going to be like basically like watching movie days. He got 6 awards, all high achievements. Went on, I think, a 17 weeks of 100s on spelling tests after failing consistently for the first 3 months, to the point where he was putting shapes in. And that was because I took the time to be with him. And then I've also taken a lot of time to work on my stuff and to get my stuff out there. And by default, trying to help other creators get their stuff out there. So I haven't stopped doing what I do. I've just started helping myself a lot more. And I'm always there to help other creators. There are still creators who contact me about stuff all the time, and I'm always happy to help. And we still do comic book advocates, and we still have our comic book advocates group. The difference is I don't look for people. I don't waste my time looking for people who need help. I let them find me. And I think that helps. I think being able to have an open door and helping those who come to you, instead of me trying to go out and help whatever you want, has helped. We've generated over 250,000 views just this year for comics, and it's rising. Actually, I think we're at 350,000 right now. I'd have to look. That's just on TikTok. Add in the reels, add in these things, we're doing it. So I've never stopped advocating for comics. I've never hated comics. I hated the individuals who hijack comics to do things that make comic book creating ugly. That's it. If there's any hate, it's towards that. I don't hate indie creators. You want to call yourself indie? That's your right. I would just ask what you think that represents. Really think about, before you just take a title, what it means. And I've learned that. Trust me. And we've brought interesting content. We've talked to each other. We've had the You're Not Alone series. I even got to play a jacked up version of myself on what has become a very controversial platform. But like, we all evolve, we all change, we all grow. And just because I don't like the idea of a title because I've seen how that title's used, doesn't mean that I'm not there to help creators. That's where a lot of people get it wrong. I'm all about the individual. I'm not about groups. And I see how little groups of people try to form together, and instead of creating with each other, they tear people down. And I'll never understand that. Never understand why you would invest all your time into hurting other people to try to get ahead. This isn't a video game. You don't suddenly take someone's spot. I'm not even sure that works in a video game that way. People are watching. People who will watch this will hear it, and a lot of them will agree. Some of them will question why they even call themselves indie, because that's just what other people do. And that happens to a lot of us. And they'll start realizing they're not indie, they're creator owned, but they're not doing it independently. The biggest lie is that we're doing it independently. The reason we're called indie comics was indie music. It wasn't even like it was given to us. As far as my indie moniker that I came up with, as much as I enjoy what it stands for, I won't be promoting it. I'll use it just because, it's mine. I like what it stands for. I won't use the die in indie because listening to all these rules and talking shit about people, that'll kill your career. So the die is definitely right in that. As far as people talking shit, let them. Trust me, time will show who they really are. Always does. And that's it. That's all I got for you. Um, Remember, you're not alone. You're always just a message away from me. And go out there and create. And don't give a fuck what anyone says, except the people who buy your books. So make sure you're giving them the best you can give them at the time. You're always going to look back and think you could have improved it, or you're doing better. And that just means you're on the journey the right way. You're learning as you go. Like I said, I'm not going to take up a lot more of your time. Wanted to get it off the chest just so people understood it. I don't have hate for anyone who identifies as indie. You're free to do whatever you want. This is your life. You want to identify as indie, do so. I'll help if I can. The one thing I ask in closing, never approach me like it's my job to do anything for you. If you're not paying me, it's not a job. When I advocate for people, I do it because I want to create a world that's more interesting by helping fellow creators. It's not my fucking job. I don't have to do anything. All I ask is you come respectfully. That's fair, right? Everyone wants to be treated with respect. Don't ever come at me like I owe you something. I don't. Don't come at me like it's my job. It's not. And most importantly, show respect to other people. Treat people how you want to be treated. I don't care if your friends are in there in a gossip circle. Be the person who leaves. Stop the gossip. Stop the bullshit. I see too many stupid fucking things going on because people are more interested in the gossip than creating good comics. Hire an editor, create good comics that stand up to the Marvel and DC. You want to do better? Then fine, do better. But make sure you have an editor. My God, I can't tell you. Remember those 1,000 books I read? Well, let me tell you, 950 of them needed an editor. I'm not talking about simple spelling mistakes. I'm talking about massive issues. Get your editor involved early, and you'll have a better book for it, I guarantee. That's it, kids. Go out there and create, and don't let anyone take that away from you. Love creating always. I don't care what you call yourself. Just make sure that you respect others and put your passions into your work.